Friends, comrades, citizens of a deeply troubled world, we stand at a moment in history where the tectonic plates of global power are shifting beneath our feet, creating tremors that are felt in every household, every factory, and every central bank across the globe. Often, when we look at the unfolding tragedy in Eastern Europe, we focus understandably on the immediate horror of the kinetic war, the suffering on the ground. But to understand the true trajectory of our century, we must look beyond the battlefield to the silent, devastating economic war that has been waged parallel to it. It is a war that was launched with supreme confidence by the collective West, based on assumptions of absolute financial dominance. Yet, as we survey the wreckage today, some 2 years later, a stark reality emerges. The strategy has not only failed to achieve its stated aims, but it has also engineered perhaps the most significant strategic self-defeat for Europe since the 1930s. Let us transport ourselves back to those frenetic days in early 2022. The prevailing wisdom in Washington, London, and Brussels was that Russia, an economy roughly the size of Italy's or Texas's, could be brought to its knees within weeks through the application of shock and awe financial sanctions. The belief was rooted in a deep hubris about the omnipotence of the US dollar and the Eurocentric financial system. The narrative was clear: we would cut them off from SWIFT, we would blockade their exports, and their war machine would grind to a halt as the ruble turned to rubble. But then the West took a step that was fundamentally different in kind from previous sanctions regimes. It was a move of breathtaking legal and systemic audacity, the freezing of nearly $300 billion of the Russian central bank's foreign exchange reserves, held in Western jurisdictions. Now, I am no friend of the oligarchic capitalism that prevails in Moscow, but as an economist who has spent a lifetime studying the intricate plumbing of the global financial architecture, I recognize this immediately for what it was: the crossing of a Rubicon. You see, the entire edifice of globalized finance, built painstakingly since Bretton Woods and accelerated after the end of the Cold War, rested on a foundational myth: the neutrality of central bank reserves. The idea that sovereign assets deposited in the vaults of New York, London, or Frankfurt were sacrosanct, regardless of political disputes. By weaponizing these reserves, by effectively confiscating the national savings of a nuclear-armed state, the West shattered that myth instantly. This was the legal move that changed everything. It was intended as a death blow to the Russian economy. Instead, it sent a chilling message to the rest of the world, to China, to India, to Brazil, to Saudi Arabia, to the entire global South. The message was simple: your money is safe with us only, so long as you fully align with our foreign policy objectives. Cross us, and your sovereign wealth is forfeit. The blowback was immediate, though Western mainstream media largely chose to ignore it at first. Instead of collapsing, the Russian technocracy, led by Elvira Nabiullina at the central bank, implemented draconian capital controls and stabilized the financial system with remarkable speed. But more importantly, the rest of the world began to accelerate contingency plans that had long been theoretical. If the US dollar system was now an explicit weapon of geopolitical coercion, then responsible nations had to find alternatives. We saw the immediate consequences in the energy market. Europe, in a fit of moral posturing combined with catastrophic strategic blindness, decided to sever its decades-long reliance on cheap Russian natural gas, the very lifeblood that had powered German industrial dominance and European prosperity. The assumption in Brussels was that the world was with us and that Russia would have nowhere else to sell its hydrocarbons. This proved to be a delusion of epic proportions. The world is vast, and its hunger for energy is insatiable. Russia rapidly pivoted eastward. We witnessed a massive reorientation of global energy logistics. Fleets of shadow tankers began moving oil to India and China. And here is the supreme irony: the hypocrisy that reveals the utter moral bankruptcy of the European political class. Europe continued to buy Russian energy, but now it buys it laundered through third parties like India, paying a massive markup for the privilege of pretending we are virtuous. We buy diesel refined in Gujarat from Russian crude, enriching middlemen and impoverishing our own citizens, all while Moscow's current account surplus balloons. The data tells a grim story that European leaders, desperate to save face, are trying to bury. The International Monetary Fund, hardly a bastion of anti-Western sentiment, has repeatedly had to upgrade its growth forecasts for the Russian economy, showing it outperforming many G7 nations, including the UK and Germany. Despite the most comprehensive sanctions regime in history, Russia's economy grew by an estimated 3.6% in 2023 and is projected to grow another 3.2% in 2020. Energy-intensive industries, chemicals, steel manufacturing are shuttering operations in the Ruhr Valley and relocating to the United States or China, driven away by uncompetitive energy costs. The CEO of BASF, the world's largest chemical producer, has warned explicitly that Europe is becoming uninvestable due to high energy costs and bureaucracy. This is not a temporary blip. This is structural damage inflicted by our own subservience to a transatlantic strategy that serves Washington's interests, not Europe's. Before we dive deeper into how this strategic blunder has accelerated the rise of alternative global power, if you find this systemic analysis valuable, please take a moment to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city and country you are watching from today. The consequences of shattering trust in the Western financial system extend far beyond immediate energy flows. We have accelerated the process of de-dollarization by perhaps a decade. For years, talk of moving away from the dollar was mostly academic. Now it is a geopolitical imperative for major powers. We see this in the rapid expansion and formalization of the BRICS alliance. What was once a loose acronym for investment bankers is fast becoming a genuine counterweight to the recent inclusion of major energy producers like Iran, the UAE and Saudi Arabia into the BRICS fold is a direct challenge to the petrodollar system that has underpinned American hegemony since then. We are seeing bilateral trade deals bypassing the dollar entirely, China and Brazil trading in yuan and rial, India and Russia trading in rupees and rubles, Saudi Arabia considering accepting yuan for oil. The West's attempt to isolate Russia has instead isolated the West. The vote at the UN condemning the invasion was widespread, yes, but look at the countries that refused to join the sanctions regime. They represent the vast majority of the global population and a significant and growing share of global GDP. They did not see a moral crusade. They saw an opportunity to reshape the world order while Europe committed economic suicide. The tragedy here is specifically Europe. The United States, possessing vast domestic energy resources and the unique privilege of printing the world's reserve currency, can absorb the costs of this new Cold War. It is significantly insulated from the energy price. Indeed, American liquefied natural gas exporters have made bumper profits, replacing Russian gas in Europe, cementing European dependence on US energy, just as we were dependent on Russian energy before. We traded one dependency for another, much more expensive one. Europe, however, has no such buffers. We have allowed ourselves to become utterly vassalized. We have outsourced our security to NATO, meaning Washington, and our economic policy to a technocratic elite in Brussels that seems incapable of strategic thought independent of American desire. The result is that Europe is the biggest loser in this geopolitical realignment. We are caught in on one side, an assertive United States that demands total compliance with its maximum pressure campaign against its rivals in Moscow and Beijing, regardless of the economic cost to its allies. On the other side, an emerging bloc of Eurasian and global South powers that controls the resources and increasingly the industrial capacity of the future. Europe, once aspirational of being a third pole in global affairs, a beacon of social democracy and diplomacy, has reduced itself to a geopolitical irrelevance, a rich aging museum, militarily impotent and economically stagnant. The confiscation of sovereign assets was the moment the mask slipped. It revealed that the rules-based international order that Western leaders love to talk about is only rules-based when it suits them. When the rules become inconvenient, they are rewritten arbitrarily. The rest of the world took note. They realized that to integrate fully into the Western financial system is to put a noose around your own neck, waiting for Washington Washington to kick away the chair, should you ever disagree with them. The irony is palpable. Vladimir Putin is undoubtedly an autocrat who launched an illegal and brutal invasion, yet by overreacting with tools of total financial warfare, the West has handed him a strategic victory that his own army could never have achieved. On the battlefield, they have forced Russia to reform its economy into a more resilient, autarkic model. They have pushed Russia into the arms of China, creating the very Eurasian alliance that Western strategists, from Mackinder to Brzezinski, warned was the ultimate nightmare for Atlantic hegemony. We are living through the end of the unipolar moment that began in 1991. That moment is dead, killed not by Russian tanks, but by Western overreach and the hubris of believing that the dollar was an omnipotent weapon rather than a public good, built on trust. When trust goes, power soon follows. For Europe, the path forward is dark. Our current crop of leaders, scholastics like Scholz, Macrons, playing at Napoleon, and bureaucrats like von der Leyen, are intellectually incapable of grasping the magnitude of their failure. They double down on the same failed strategies, demanding more sanctions, more conformity and more austerity for their own populations to pay for it all. We need a radical break. We need a Europe that can stand on its own 2 feet, capable of formulating its own security arrangements and its own economic relationships with both East and West. A Europe that does not blindly follow Washington into every confrontation. But looking at the political landscape today, the courage and vision required for such a pivot are nowhere to be found among the established. We are drifting, rudderless, into a future where Europe is poorer, weaker, and more divided, having sacrificed its strategic autonomy on the altar of a transatlantic alliance that no longer serves its interests. The legal move intended to checkmate Russia has instead overturned the board, and Europe is the piece that has fallen furthest. Please note that this channel is not official and is not affiliated with Yanis Varoufakis.